The world's most famous ancient monuments might be pieces of the same forgotten puzzle. This video explores the revolutionary idea of the global knowledge networks that united humanity's earliest architects. And by the end, you will see human history not as a series of isolated events, but as a single, interconnected story. We are going to uncover how the builders of the pyramids, the creators of Stonehenge, and the engineers of massive mounds across the Americas might have shared a common blueprint, a silent language of stars and stones passed across continents. What truly connects a temple in Japan to a fortress in Peru? And why would cultures separated by oceans build in such eerily similar ways? The answer could redefine everything we know about our shared past. What does it mean to discover that our ancestors may have been far more connected than we ever believed? That blueprint, that silent language, has a name. We call it an ancient knowledge network, but this term means something far deeper than a simple trade route for goods. Think of it not as the exchange of objects, but as the exchange of minds. This is about the flow of complex, abstract ideas, the kind that shape civilizations. It is the transmission of a mathematical formula for calculating the movement of planets, the precise architectural ratio that makes a structure stand for millennia, or a shared story about the creation of the world told in the alignment of stones. This network was the slow, profound internet of the ancient world, a web of connections spun not with fiber optic cables, but with footpaths, sea lanes, and the collective memory of generations. Imagine a master architect from the bustling cities of the Indus Valley, a person who understood the secret of perfect, standardized bricks. Through conversation, perhaps through drawing in the sand, they share this principle with a trader, a traveler setting out on a journey that will last for years. That traveler carries the idea not in a ledger but in their mind. They might share it with a stoneworker in Mesopotamia who adapts it for a different material. The idea evolves, merges with local knowledge, and continues its journey. This is how knowledge networks functioned. They were fueled by human movement, by the great migrations, the sacred pilgrimages to distant sites, and the long, risky voyages of merchants seeking new markets. The transfer was not instantaneous. It could take centuries, with each generation adding a layer of understanding, slowly weaving a shared fabric of human achievement. So when we look at two pyramids on opposite sides of the planet and see similar angles, or two stone circles aligned to the same star, the question shifts. We move beyond asking, could this be a coincidence? Instead, we begin to search for the thread. Was there a path, however slow and indirect, that could have carried a seed of that idea from one culture to another? The core concept of ancient knowledge networks invites us to look for patterns of intentional communication and cultural synthesis. It suggests that our ancestors, separated by vast distances, might have been participants in a long, slow conversation, building a common heritage of sky and stone long before the first history book was ever written. This changes the narrative from one of isolated genius to one of connected wisdom. The silent language of the heavens is etched into the earth itself. Across continents and cultures, our ancestors built their most sacred sites not just to impress, but to converse with the cosmos. This shared architectural grammar, focused on celestial alignments, forms the first and perhaps most compelling thread in our search for an ancient knowledge network. It is called archaeoastronomy, the study of how ancient peoples understood and used the sky, and what it reveals is not a collection of random guesses, but a chorus of precise, deliberate observations. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, is not merely a tomb pointed north. Its narrow air shafts are precisely angled to target specific stars important to Egyptian beliefs about the afterlife. Far away on the Salisbury Plain, the massive stones of Stonehenge frame the rising sun on the summer solstice, marking the longest day of the year with a dramatic, engineered spectacle. Across the Atlantic, in what is now the American Southwest, a spiral petroglyph in Choco Canyon is pierced by a dagger of sunlight that moves across its center only on the equinoxes. These are not coincidences. They represent a profound, shared realization that human time and celestial time are linked. The question then becomes, how did this knowledge spread? Could cultures separated by oceans and millennia have independently arrived at the same complex astronomical conclusions and the same urge to encode them in stone? Some alignments are simple, like noting where the sun rises, but others require generations of meticulous observation to track the slow wobble of stars or the complex cycles of the moon. The precision seen at many sites suggests a depth of understanding that feels like more than isolated discovery. It feels like a curriculum. This points to the possibility of a transmitted celestial blueprint, a core set of astronomical principles that traveled along those slow knowledge networks. A seafaring culture, adept at navigating by the stars, would carry that practical sky lore with them. When they interacted with a land-based culture building a permanent temple, that knowledge could be translated from a tool for travel into a scripture for stone. The shared language was not one of words, but of angles, shadows, and alignments. A builder in Mesopotamia might explain a concept by drawing a line in the sand toward a particular star at its zenith. A visitor from the Indus Valley would understand that line, that intention, and could carry the principle home, applying it to their own local sky and their own sacred materials. In this way, a global network of observatories was born, each one speaking the same silent language, each one a testament to a connected human effort to map our place in the universe. This celestial thread weaves a story of a shared human project, a collective longing to reach beyond the earth and anchor our greatest creations in the timeless dance of the stars. But this celestial conversation was built upon a physical language, one written in stone. From the windswept coasts of Scotland to the high Andes of Peru, a distinct architectural signature emerges, a whisper in granite and limestone that speaks of a shared understanding. This is the Megalithic Connection, a global vocabulary of massive stones. We see it in the towering, mortarless walls of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, where blocks weighing hundreds of tons are fitted together with a precision that denies a blade of grass. We find it in the mysterious submarine-like stone of Ishi-no Hoden in Japan, a single, perfectly carved megalith whose purpose remains a beautiful enigma. And we recognize it in the ancient temples of Malta, complexes like Haga Kim, where enormous limestone slabs form doorways and chambers aligned with the solstice sun. The style is unmistakable, and it asks a relentless question. How do we explain such profound technical similarity across continents that were, according to conventional history, worlds apart? The answer may lie not in a single wandering tribe, but in the slow diffusion of an idea, a revolutionary stone-working ideology. Imagine a master builder, part engineer, part philosopher. Their genius was not just in moving a mountain, but in understanding how to make a mountain serve a purpose. They knew the secrets of leverage, of using water and sand to polish stone to a mirror finish, of selecting rock with an innate understanding of its grain and strength. They grasped principles of acoustics, designing chambers where sound behaved in sacred ways, and practiced a form of geomancy, sensing how to place a structure in harmony with the invisible energies of the earth itself. This was a complete school of thought, a discipline that valued permanence, precision, and a deep dialogue with the natural world. The knowledge itself could travel. A master from one culture interacting with traders or pilgrims might share the core principle of the inclined plane or the water-cut channel. That seed of an idea, carried across a sea or down a trade route, would then take root in a new land. Local builders, facing their own unique mountains and their own cultural needs, would adapt the principle. They would use different tools, different types of stone, but the underlying philosophy, the drive to create something eternal and in tune with the earth, remained the same. This could explain why the style feels so familiar yet is never an exact copy. We are not looking for identical blueprints, but for a shared technical language. The global presence of megalithic architecture suggests that this language was once fluent among many cultures, a testament to a connected network of builders who believed that to build for the ages, you must first learn to speak with the stone. These principles of stone and sky were governed by a deeper, invisible code. This is the language of sacred geometry, a universal mathematics of form and proportion that seems to whisper from the blueprints of the ancient world. It is more than just practical engineering, it is a spiritual technology. Certain shapes and ratios, like the golden ratio or the precise value of pi, appear again and again, from the column spacing of the Greek Parthenon to the foundational proportions of the Great Pyramid and the intricate mandalas that guide the construction of Hindu temples. These are not random aesthetic choices. They represent a profound, shared belief that the cosmos itself is built upon perfect geometric principles, and by embedding those same principles into our architecture, we can create a microcosm, a small piece of heaven here on Earth. The appearance of these complex mathematical concepts across disconnected cultures is one of the strongest arguments for a shared knowledge network. Discovering the Pythagorean theorem or the golden ratio independently once is remarkable, but finding it meticulously applied in sacred contexts from Egypt to India to Mesoamerica begins to feel like the use of a common textbook. This geometric code functioned as a universal design manual. It provided a framework that any initiated builder anywhere in the world could understand and apply. If you knew the code, you could create a structure that was not only physically sound but also spiritually resonant, one that harmonized with the perceived order of the universe. The knowledge of how to generate these shapes, how to divide a space using these sacred ratios, would have been among the most prized and protected wisdom a culture possessed. It was the kind of knowledge that would be carefully taught, meticulously memorized, and shared only with those deemed worthy. This makes its widespread presence so telling. It suggests that along those slow-moving networks of trade and pilgrimage, there traveled not just merchants and goods, but also philosophers of form, geometers of the divine. They carried this code, perhaps encoded in stories, illustrated in sand, or demonstrated with ropes and stakes. A master builder in one land could convey the principle of a perfect triangle to a visiting scholar, who would then carry that seed of understanding across a continent, where it would blossom into a temple dedicated to a completely different god, yet built upon the same eternal mathematics. This geometric thread ties the ancient world together with a precision that mere coincidence cannot explain. It points to a collective human endeavor to translate the invisible harmony of the cosmos into a language of stone, a silent conversation conducted across millennia through the enduring power of shape and number. A changing sky demanded a new kind of shelter. The grand narrative of human connection is often written in stone, but it was first set in motion by something far more powerful, the climate itself. To understand why these ideas began to flow across continents, we must look to the great catalyst of the ancient world, a period of profound environmental transformation. As the last ice age receded, melting glaciers and rising sea levels redrew the map of the world. Coastlines vanished, fertile valleys flooded, and familiar hunting grounds transformed. Then, around 4,200 years ago, a severe and prolonged drought gripped vast regions from the Mediterranean to the Indus Valley, an event scientists call the 4.2 kiloyear event. This was not a minor hardship, it was a civilization-altering crisis. River systems that sustained great cities faltered, harvests failed, and the very foundations of society were shaken. In the face of such instability, human communities were presented with a stark choice: adapt or face collapse. This climate chaos became the great mixer of cultures. As water sources dried up and fertile land disappeared, entire populations were set in motion. These were not leisurely explorations, but urgent journeys of survival. And when people move, they carry their most vital possessions with them. But these possessions were not just gold or grain, they were the intangible assets of knowledge. A community that had mastered canal irrigation to survive in an arid region carried that engineering principle as a lifeline. A group that had developed drought-resistant seed varieties held that agricultural knowledge as their most precious treasure. As migrating groups encountered one another in new territories, the exchange was not merely social, it was essential. The sharing of a new building technique for stronger homes, a novel method for food storage, or a more efficient way to harness water, these were not acts of casual diplomacy, but the very mechanics of survival. This environmental pressure forged the first, strongest strands of the global network. Consider the rising seas. For coastal communities, encroaching waters were an existential threat. The response was innovation in boat building and open ocean navigation, technologies that did more than just allow people to escape, they enabled them to connect. With improved vessels, what were once impossible distances became challenging but navigable voyages. A seafaring culture displaced by flooding could carry its knowledge of stellar navigation and hull designed to entirely new continents, seeding that knowledge wherever they made landfall. The monumental architecture we marvel at today may have been, in part, a response to this age of uncertainty. In a world growing increasingly unpredictable, to build something permanent, something aligned with the eternal cycles of the stars, was an act of defiance and hope. It was a way to create order from chaos, to anchor a community to a specific, sacred point in a shifting landscape. The shared techniques for moving megaliths or calculating celestial alignments were, therefore, more than intellectual pursuits. They were survival strategies for the human spirit. Climate change did not invent human ingenuity, but it compelled its most rapid and widespread sharing. It forced scattered cultures to become collaborators in the grand project of civilization, weaving their individual threads of knowledge into the first resilient global web. The pyramid is perhaps the most powerful architectural idea humanity has ever conceived. While the smooth, sloping sides of Giza are iconic, they are just one dialect in a global language of ascending stone. In Mesopotamia, the ancient Sumerians built their own step pyramids, known as ziggurats, like the great structure at massive stairways to the gods. Across the Atlantic, the vast, flat-topped earthen mounds of Cahokia in North America once supported temples that touched the sky. Further south, the Maya and Aztecs engineered their own breathtaking step pyramids, like the Temple of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza, where shadows become serpents descending at the equinox. The styles are distinct, shaped by local materials and beliefs, but the core concept transcends any single culture. It is the idea of the artificial mountain, a structure that does not just occupy space but actively seeks to bridge worlds. This was far more than a practical design for a stable building. The pyramid functioned as a spiritual axis mundi, a world center, a sacred pole connecting the earthly realm with the heavens above and sometimes the underworld below. It was a physical representation of a nearly universal cosmological vision, a staged ascent toward the divine. In many creation stories, life itself emerged from a primordial mound rising from the waters of chaos. By building their own mounds, our ancestors were reenacting the very moment of creation, anchoring their community to that sacred point of origin. The stepped sides could symbolize the difficult, layered journey of the soul, or the tears of the cosmos itself. The flat sum, it was not an ending but a beginning, a platform for rituals that brought priests and rulers closer to the celestial powers. So how did this specific, profound idea appear in stone and earth across oceans? It behaves less like an independent invention and more like what we might call a cultural meme, a unit of meaning so powerful and adaptable that it spread through the ancient knowledge network. The core symbolic package, the mountain, the ascent, the connection, was incredibly portable. A trader or traveler would not need to carry stone blueprints. They simply carried the story, the myth of the sacred mound. They could describe the feeling of climbing a temple in their homeland, the way the horizon fell away and the sky opened up. That resonant idea could then be translated by local architects using the materials at hand, whether it was the limestone of the Yucatan, the mud brick of Mesopotamia, or the packed earth of the Mississippi Valley. The pyramid was adapted, not copied. In Egypt, it became a smooth-sided representation of the sun's rays. In Mesoamerica, it became a steep staircase for ceremonial processions. In North America, it became a vast, gentle plateau for entire community gatherings. Each culture dressed the core idea in its own spiritual garments, but the skeletal form, the urge to build upward toward the sacred, remained unmistakably the same. This global echo of the pyramid suggests our ancestors were not just exchanging goods, but exchanging a fundamental vision of humanity's place in the universe, choosing the same profound shape to reach for it. The blueprint for this global conversation required a courier, and the most effective messengers walked on water. While land routes connected continents, the oceans served as the ultimate superhighways of the ancient world, a vast, liquid plain where ideas could travel with a speed and directness impossible on foot. To truly grasp the scale of this network, we must look to the master mariners, the cultures who learned to read the language of the sea. The Phoenicians, legendary traders of the Mediterranean, are said to have sailed around the continent of Africa centuries before the Common Era. In the boundless Pacific, Polynesian voyagers achieved a feat of navigation that still staggers the mind. Using only the stars as a map, the patterns of swells as a compass, and the flight of birds as a guide to land, they settled islands scattered across millions of square miles of open ocean. And a growing body of evidence, from shared plant species to linguistic clues, suggests that pre-Columbian voyages may have connected the Americas with other parts of the world long before the year 1492. These were not aimless drifters, they were the disciplined couriers of a planetary system. A Phoenician ship was a floating repository of knowledge. Its cargo hold might contain ingots of tin, but its crew carried something more valuable, the formula for alloying that tin with copper to create bronze. They carried the standardized weights and measures used in ports from Tyre to Carthage, a system that allowed for fair trade across cultures. They carried stories, the epic of a dying and rising god that might find echoes in distant lands. When such a ship made landfall, it did not just offload goods, it plugged one entire cultural knowledge graph into another. The local chieftain or priest would meet not just with merchants, but with engineers, storytellers, and astronomers. A single voyage could introduce a new technique for strengthening mortar, a new motif for pottery decoration, or a new method for predicting lunar eclipses. This explains some of history's most puzzling synchronicities. How did the sweet potato, a crop native to South America, find its way to Polynesian islands long before European contact? How did certain artistic symbols, like the spiral or the stepped fret, appear in both Mesoamerican and Southeast Asian art? These are not proofs of conquest, but fingerprints of contact, subtle traces left by these maritime nodes in the network. The ocean highway made the exchange three-dimensional. A land route follows geography, winding through mountains and along rivers, but a skilled navigator on the open sea could draw a straight line, a theoretical shortest path between 2 points of culture. This allowed for surprising and direct connections that bypassed all the intermediate lands. A Polynesian voyager setting out from Tahiti could theoretically carry an idea across the Pacific to the shores of South America without ever touching the continents in between. The network was not a flat web but a dynamic, living system. The seafarer was its most active agent, a human synapse sparking connections across the blue vastness, ensuring that no great idea, no matter where it was born, had to remain an island. The most resilient vessels for knowledge were not made of wood but of words. While stone and star alignments offer one kind of evidence, the ancient world whispered its deepest truths through stories. Shared myths and symbols form a parallel, living library, a testament to ideas that traveled on the breath of storytellers across generations and continents. Consider the flood narrative. It is a story told from the Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia to the legends of the Maya, from the biblical account to the lore of indigenous cultures in Australia. The details vary, but the core is eerily consistent, a great deluge that cleanses the world with a few survivors chosen to begin anew. This is more than a common fear of water. For communities living at the end of the last ice age, as glaciers melted and seas rose hundreds of feet, catastrophic flooding was not a myth. It was a lived, generational trauma. The story became a vital survival manual encoded in allegory. It taught where not to build permanent settlements. It emphasized the value of boat-building knowledge, and it preserved the memory of lost coastal lands for descendants who would never see them. The myth was a container for critical environmental data. The same principle applies to the recurring figure of the civilizing hero, a being who emerges from the sea or the sky to bring humanity the gifts of law, agriculture, and writing. In Mesopotamia, he was Ons, a fish god who taught the Sumerians everything. In Mesoamerica, he was the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl, a bringer of maize and calendar systems. These are not mere coincidences of imagination. They behave like cultural memory markers for profound technological or social revolutions. The arrival of a new, high-yield crop like maize or wheat could truly feel like a god's gift, transforming a society overnight. The hero myth packages that transformative event, attributing it to a divine source, and ensures the knowledge of how to cultivate it is passed down as sacred lore. The story carries the technology within its plot. This symbolic transmission created a global vocabulary of motifs. The dragon or serpent, representing chaotic natural forces and primordial wisdom, appears from Chinese iconography to Celtic knots to Mesoamerican temples. The spiral, symbolizing the journey of the soul, the cycles of time, or the whirl of creation, is carved into Neolithic stones in Ireland, painted on pottery in ancient Greece, and woven into the textiles of the Andes. When we see the same complex symbol, like the stepped fret or the tree of life, appearing in art separated by oceans, we are likely not seeing independent invention. We are looking at a cultural fingerprint. A trader from the Indus Valley might have a garment with a distinctive border pattern. A local artisan in Central America sees it, is struck by its beauty and perhaps its symbolic meaning, and adapts the pattern into their own ceramic design. The symbol migrates, its form constant even as its local interpretation evolves. This is how myths and motifs functioned in the knowledge network. They were the open-source software of the ancient mind, adaptable, memorable, and capable of carrying layers of meaning about the world, from practical farming advice to the deepest cosmological principles. They were the threads that connected not just markets but mythologies, weaving a shared human story long before the first empire ever rose. Stories leave echoes, but artifacts leave fingerprints. While shared myths suggest a connected mind, the physical objects unearthed by archaeologists provide the undeniable evidence of a connected world. These are not theories, but tangible pieces of the puzzle, found far from their place of origin, whispering of journeys taken thousands of years ago. Take, for instance, the discovery of intricate Mesopotamian cylinder seals in the ruins of the ancient Indus Valley cities. These were not mere trinkets, they were the official stamps of identity and authority, used to mark clay tablets and seal documents. Finding one in a distant land is like finding a corporate logo from one continent etched onto a product from another. It is proof of formal exchange, of established trade relationships where not only goods, but the very concepts of administration and ownership were being communicated. Similarly, the distinct style of Olmec jade artifacts, with their iconic wood jaguar motifs, has been found far from their heartland in what is now Mexico, appearing in Central American sites. Jade was more than a precious stone, it was a sacred material believed to hold the breath of life itself. The movement of these carved objects signifies the travel of deep religious ideas and aesthetic values carried by people who understood their profound significance. Perhaps even more intriguing than the objects themselves are the marks upon them. Scattered across the globe, from the valleys of the Indus River to the remote isolation of Easter Island, we find systems of inscribed symbols that bear a haunting visual resemblance. The undeciphered script of the Indus Valley civilization and the mysterious Rongo-Rongo glyphs of Easter Island share design elements that are difficult to dismiss as pure chance, like similar geometric shapes and humanoid figures. While no one suggests a direct translation exists, these similarities ignite a compelling possibility. Could they be distant cousins derived from some ancient, shared symbolic language, a kind of proto-script that served as a visual lingua franca for early seafarers or traders? This would not be a full alphabet, but a set of core symbols representing fundamental concepts: the sun, water, a vessel, a leader. Such a system could allow for basic communication across linguistic barriers, a primitive but effective tool for recording transactions, lineages, or navigational routes. The movement of any inscribed object, whether a seal, a piece of pottery, or a carved tablet, proves one thing conclusively: that the ideas themselves were mobile. Someone carried that object, and with it they carried a concept of how to represent thought visually, a notion of what was important enough to record in a permanent way. This tangible trail is our most direct link to those ancient networks. Each artifact is a node in that vast, silent web, a physical testament to the human desire to connect, to trade, and to ensure that even across the span of continents, a message could be sent and understood. The most powerful myths are not born from nothing. They are echoes of a real-world event, a cultural memory so profound it reshapes the stories we tell for millennia. Legends of lost continents like Atlantis or Lemuria are often relegated to fantasy, yet within their epic tales we can sometimes hear the faint, distorted whisper of history itself. The philosopher Plato gave us the most famous version, describing a mighty island empire called Atlantis that sank beneath the sea in a single day and night of cataclysm. For centuries, this was seen as pure allegory, but modern archaeology suggests a compelling source for the story: the sudden and violent collapse of the Minoan civilization. This sophisticated society, centered on the island of Crete, was a master of the seas with grand palaces and advanced art. Then, around the year 1600 before the Common Era, the nearby volcanic island of Thera, modern Santorini, exploded in one of the largest eruptions in human history. The blast would have been heard across continents. It generated tsunamis that devastated the northern coast of Crete, blanketed the region in ash, and crippled the Minoan trade network. To the Greeks who came later, the memory of this powerful seafaring culture that vanished amid fire and wave could easily have evolved over centuries of retelling into the grand myth of a sunken, advanced civilization. The story of Atlantis, then, may not be a map to a physical location, but a metaphor for a very real historical process: the loss of a central node in the ancient knowledge network. This idea expands when we consider the broader canvas of our planet's past. The concept of a lost, advanced culture that seeded knowledge across the globe could be a symbolic memory of something even more ancient, the now submerged coastlines of the last ice age. For thousands of years, while glaciers locked up vast amounts of water, sea levels were hundreds of feet lower than they are today. What are now continental shelves were dry, fertile lands ripe for human settlement. Places like Doggerland, a vast tract that connected the British Isles to mainland Europe, or the Sunda Shelf, which joined the islands of Southeast Asia into a single peninsula, were not marginal zones. They were likely heartlands, home to stable populations, rich ecosystems, and early centers of innovation. These were the original hubs in humanity's earliest network. Then the climate shifted. The world warmed, the ice melted, and the seas rose, not in a sudden event, but relentlessly over generations. These coastal plains slowly drowned, their rivers and hills becoming the seafloor we know today. The communities living there faced a slow-motion disaster, a forced migration that scattered people and their accumulated knowledge inland and across newly formed islands. This great dispersal may be the grain of truth within the global flood myths and lost continent legends. The survivors of these sunken lands did not vanish. They carried their stories, their boat designs, their fishing techniques, and their understanding of the stars to new shores. They became the teachers, the architects, and the innovators who interacted with inland populations, seeding New World civilizations with ideas that had been cultivated for millennia on lands now lost to the ocean. So when we hear a tale of a sunken city, we might not be listening to fiction, but to a deeply encoded history lesson, a memory of the moment when the map changed and the network, fractured by the rising waters, was forced to reinvent itself, sending its threads of knowledge spiraling out across the globe to be woven into new and unexpected patterns. A shared blueprint requires a shared ruler. When we examine the ancient world's grandest structures, a startling pattern emerges, not just in their shape, but in their very bones, in the distances between stones and the dimensions of their chambers. From the windswept ring of Stonehenge to the sun-baked ruins of Mycenaean Greece, a specific unit of measurement, approximately 2.72 feet, seems to have been the builder's rule. Researchers call it the megalithic yard. Its presence across such vast geography is not a vague similarity, it is a precise echo. How could builders separated by sea and mountain arrive independently at the exact same length for their most important work? The answer points toward a network with a common technical language. This was not a casual borrowing of an idea, it was the adoption of a standard. Imagine a master surveyor arriving at a new site. They would not begin by arguing with local laborers over how long a pace should be. They would unroll a knotted cord or produce a carved rod of a set length, and the work would begin from that shared certainty. The megalithic yard, and units like the Egyptian royal cubit found in pyramids and echoed elsewhere, functioned as the ancient equivalent of a universal USB port, a standardized interface that allowed different cultural systems to connect and collaborate on a physical project. This standardization implies something profound about the network's sophistication. It suggests formalized training, knowledge of this unit, and the geometric principles that went with it would have been carefully taught, perhaps within guilds or schools of builders who saw themselves as custodians of a sacred craft. A student in one region would learn to generate the measure using the swing of a pendulum or the proportions of the human body, the same method taught a continent away. This created a fraternity of architects who could, in theory, understand each other's plans at a glance. The use of a common measurement system enabled more than just independent building, it could have enabled true collaboration. If a culture experienced a shortage of skilled labor or sought prestige by importing master designers, a shared unit of measure meant an architect from a distant land could effectively communicate with local workers. They could say, "Make this foundation 30 megalithic yards across," and everyone would understand, eliminating a huge barrier to cooperative, large-scale engineering. This shared toolkit transforms our view of these sites from isolated monuments into potential nodes in a single, continent-spanning project, a collective effort to inscribe a sacred geometry upon the Earth itself, using a ruler that everyone agreed upon. The invisible ruler of the megalithic yard was held in human hands. To preserve such precise knowledge across centuries without written manuals, our ancestors developed a second, equally vital principle for their global network, a living, breathing system of memory. This was the Master-Apprentice model, reinforced by a powerful oral tradition. In a world before widespread literacy, complex engineering formulas, celestial charts, and the sacred geometry of construction were not written down, they were woven into the very fabric of culture. Imagine a young apprentice not reading a textbook on acoustics, but learning a song whose rhythm mimicked the perfect intervals needed to create a resonant chamber within a temple. Picture a student memorizing a story where the hero's journey mapped the precise steps for aligning a stone circle to the winter solstice sunrise. This was how knowledge lived. It was encoded in verse, enacted in ritual, and passed from one generation to the next through relentless, disciplined repetition. The integrity of the entire architectural network depended on this human chain of memory. To ensure this sacred craft survived, guilds of specialized builders often formed. These were not just local unions, they could be itinerant brotherhoods, traveling custodians of technique. Legends speak of groups like the Dionysian artificers in the ancient Mediterranean, master builders and initiators into the mysteries of their art. In India, the Asthapati were not merely architects, they were priest engineers who understood a building as a living organism, its proportions derived from cosmic principles. Such a guild member would carry a vast mental library, the culmination of a lifetime of training. He knew the chants for blessing a foundation stone, the hand signals for directing the placement of a lintel, and the seasonal stories that dictated when certain construction phases should begin. When such a master traveled, perhaps following trade routes or invited by a distant ruler to assist in a grand project, he did not bring blueprints. He brought the songs, the stories, and the embodied knowledge in his hands and mind. Upon arrival, he would take on local apprentices, teaching them not just how to build but how to remember. This created a cascading human web. A master from Mesopotamia might teach a promising student in the Indus Valley. That student, once skilled, might travel east, sharing an adapted version of that knowledge with a new community. Each node in this network was a person, a living repository. The system had incredible strengths. It was adaptable. A master could adjust principles to local materials and customs. It was also highly secure, protecting elite knowledge from being easily stolen or corrupted. Most importantly, it created a shared culture of building that transcended language. A master from one land could demonstrate a knotting technique for moving stones to an apprentice in another, and the physical act, the shared focus, became the communication. This living network of skilled individuals maintained the integrity of the architectural code for millennia. The consistency we see in measurements and alignments across continents is a testament not to a single, lost blueprint, but to the fidelity of this human transmission, a slow, patient conversation between masters and apprentices that turned individual insight into a lasting, global legacy. A shared recipe is only as strong as its local ingredients. This brings us to the third, and perhaps most beautiful, principle of the ancient knowledge network: adaptation and syncretism. The goal was never to create identical copies across the world. Instead, the network thrived on a dynamic process of creative reinterpretation, where a universal concept was woven into the unique cultural fabric of a new land. Think of it not as a strict blueprint but as a seed. The seed contains the potential for a great tree, but how that tree grows, the shape of its branches and the texture of its bark, is shaped entirely by the local soil, sunlight, and climate. When the core idea of a pyramid traveled from the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Mesoamerica, it underwent a profound transformation. In Egypt, the pyramid was a smooth-sided mountain of cut stone, a tomb for a god-king, oriented by the circumpolar stars for his journey to the afterlife. In Mesoamerica, the same essential form was reimagined. It became a stepped mountain of limestone, a platform for public ritual, with steep stairways meant for ceremonial processions. At its summit stood not a sealed burial chamber, but an open temple dedicated to local deities like the feathered serpent, Kukulkan. The material changed, the purpose evolved, and the symbolism was completely reborn. This is syncretism in action, the powerful blending of an external idea with deep, indigenous beliefs. It is the ultimate sign of a healthy, living network. It proves that the receiving culture was not a passive recipient, blindly copying a foreign design. They were active, discerning integrators. They saw the power in the pyramid form, its ability to connect earth and sky, and they said, "We understand this principle, and here is how we express it within our own world." The same process unfolded with celestial alignments. The concept of tracking the solstice sun was global, but how it was celebrated was intensely local. At Stonehenge, it might involve a procession through the stone arches at dawn. At Choco Canyon, it was a single dagger of light piercing a spiral carved into a cliff face. The astronomical constant was shared, but the ritual, the story told by the light and shadow, belonged uniquely to that people and that place. This adaptability was the network's greatest strength. It allowed for a shared foundation of knowledge, a common library of architectural and astronomical principles, without demanding cultural uniformity. A master builder arriving with knowledge of sacred geometry would not impose his home temple's exact design. He would work with local artisans, learn their stories of creation, and help them translate those geometric principles into a structure that felt inherently theirs. The result was a world rich with diversity, yet underpinned by a silent, common grammar. The global network did not erase differences, it celebrated them, providing a flexible framework upon which countless unique and magnificent cultures could build their own versions of heaven on earth. This tells us the ancient conversation was not one of command, but of collaboration, a slow, patient exchange where every participant added their own voice to a chorus that spanned the entire planet. A coiled shape appears in the dreams of every ancient culture, from the shimmering Nagas guarding subterranean treasures in India to the celestial dragons ruling the waters of China, from the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl bringing wisdom to Mesoamerica to the world-encircling Yermungandr of Norse legend. The serpent or dragon is a universal character in humanity's oldest stories. This is far more than a shared fear of snakes. The symbol carries a remarkably consistent portfolio of meanings, wisdom, hidden knowledge, the primal forces of the earth, and the vital essence of water itself. Why would cultures with no apparent contact all choose the same sinuous form to represent these profound concepts? The answer may lie not in biology, but in geology, and in the very practical needs of a migrating, building species. Some researchers suggest these myths are not mere fantasies, but encoded observations of the living earth. The serpent, often depicted dwelling in caves or deep pools, could be a metaphor for telluric currents, the subtle electromagnetic energies that flow through the planet's crust, or for what are sometimes called ley lines, the hypothetical alignments of ancient sites. More concretely, the association with water is absolutely literal. In a world without modern drilling equipment, finding a reliable water source was the difference between life and death for a new settlement. Knowledge of how to locate springs, how to read the landscape for hidden aquifers, or how to sense the subtle telltale signs of underground water was the most precious survival data a community could possess. This expertise was often guarded by a shaman or a wise elder, someone in tune with the whispers of the earth. It is easy to see how such a person, the one who could point to a spot on the ground and say, "Dig here," would be described as having a rapport with the serpent spirit of the waters. The myth preserves the technology. A story about a great dragon whose breath creates hot springs or whose body shapes the course of a river is a way of mapping geothermal activity and hydrological patterns for generations who cannot read a scientific report. It turns a complex geological understanding into a memorable, transmissible narrative. When this symbolic package traveled along the knowledge network, it arrived not as a dry technical manual, but as a powerful, adaptable story. A seafaring people skilled in reading ocean currents might carry their version of the sea serpent when they shared tales with a mountain-dwelling culture. That people might reinterpret the serpent as a spirit of the mountain springs that fed their terraced farms. The core idea, the connection between the sinuous form and the hidden, life-giving forces of the planet, remained intact, but its local expression evolved perfectly to fit the new environment. In this light, the global serpent becomes the perfect metaphor for the knowledge network itself. It represents something flowing, connective, often invisible on the surface, yet vital to the health and growth of every culture it touched. Just as mythical serpents were often seen as sources of ancient wisdom, the network itself was the serpentine path along which the wisdom of the ages silently traveled, linking distant minds through a shared language of symbol and earth. Time itself was the most precious commodity our ancestors ever learned to measure. While the serpent myth spoke to the hidden energies of the earth, another system emerged to map the visible dance of the heavens, a technology so vital it became the very heartbeat of civilization. This was the calendar, far more than a simple tool for planting crops. It was a complex piece of social and cosmic engineering, a master clockwork designed to synchronize entire societies with the relentless rhythm of the stars, sun, and moon. The development of these systems stands as one of humanity's highest intellectual achievements, and their striking parallels across the globe suggest they were not born in isolation, but were refined through a connected planetary conversation. Consider the sheer ambition of these projects. The ancient Egyptians perfected a solar calendar of 365 days, recognizing the need for a leap day long before it was formally instituted. Across the Atlantic, the Maya developed a breathtakingly intricate system that wove together a 260-day sacred calendar with a 365-day solar year, creating a calendar round that took 52 years to repeat. In Asia, lunisolar calendars balanced the cycles of the moon with the solar year through the sophisticated addition of intercalary months. Each of these represents centuries, if not millennia, of meticulous generational observation. To track the slow wobble in a planet's orbit or the precise day the sun stands still at a solstice requires a sustained, institutional effort to record data across lifetimes. This raises a profound question. Did cultures separated by continents each dedicate generations of priests to the same grueling, independent labor of watching the sky, or is there evidence of a more efficient path? The answer may lie in the specific celestial bodies they chose to track with such devotion. The planet Venus, for instance, becomes a telling thread. Its cycle of appearing as the morning star and the evening star lasts roughly 584 days. This complex pattern was carefully recorded not only by the Maya, who used it to schedule important ceremonies and even conflicts, but also by the Babylonians, who inscribed its movements on clay tablets. Such a precise focus on the same difficult target by cultures with no known direct contact hints at something more than independent curiosity. It suggests a shared priority, a piece of celestial data deemed so universally important that it became a cornerstone of timekeeping science across the network. This knowledge had immense practical power. A shared calendar system allowed for the synchronization of activities across vast distances, imagine a trade network spanning thousands of miles. If merchants from different regions all operated on a calendar aligned to, say, the spring equinox, they could coordinate the timing of festivals, markets, and caravan departures with remarkable efficiency. A pilgrimage to a distant sacred site could be planned years in advance, knowing that people from many lands would converge on the same appointed day, guided by the same celestial clock. But the calendar's greatest role may have been in the realm of sacred architecture, the very monuments we have been exploring. You cannot align a temple to the rising sun on the winter solstice unless you know, with absolute certainty, which day that solstice will occur. The calendar provided that certainty. It transformed the sky from a beautiful mystery into a predictable, programmable backdrop for human ritual. The construction of a pyramid or a stone circle was not a continuous labor. It was a phased project with foundation laying, stone raising, and dedication ceremonies, each scheduled for astronomically potent moments. The calendar was the project manager for the gods, a network technology that ensured a temple built in Egypt and one begun in Mesoamerica a century later were both orchestrated to the same cosmic timetable. This shared temporal language allowed the network to function not just in space, but in time, creating a synchronized pulse of human activity that beat in harmony with the universe itself. The quest for the perfect stone may have been humanity's first great scientific revolution. While we marvel at the size of ancient blocks, a deeper mystery lies in their very substance, the alchemy that turned earth and water into something nearly eternal. Recent studies of Roman harbors reveal a concrete that not only withstands seawater but actually grows stronger over centuries, a secret recipe lost for ages. Similarly, some researchers propose that certain stones in Egyptian monuments show signs of being cast like a liquid geopolymer, a reconstituted stone rather than quarried in the traditional sense. This points to a sophisticated, almost magical understanding of chemistry, where builders were not just moving mountains but growing them. The formula for such a material would have been more valuable than gold, a state secret guarded with the utmost care. If this knowledge of advanced material science flowed through the ancient network, it would solve one of history's persistent puzzles: how cultures separated by vast distances all managed to construct monuments that defied time itself. Were there ancient laboratories, workshops where masters experimented with lime, volcanic ash, and mineral salts like natron? These early alchemists sought not to turn lead into gold, but to transform humble clay and rubble into sacred, indestructible stone. Their philosopher's stone was a practical one, the perfect binder, the ultimate mortar, the geopolymer mix that could be poured into molds to create seamless, gigantic blocks. This technical law would have been a prime candidate for transmission. A master builder from a culture that had perfected a lime plaster of exceptional hardness might share the core principle, the critical temperature for burning limestone, with a visiting artisan. That seed of knowledge carried along a trade route could inspire experiments in a new land with different local materials, leading to a unique but related formula. The Roman use of volcanic pozzolana ash in their seawater concrete could be a regional adaptation of a much older, widespread understanding of reactive silicates. When we see the uncanny durability of structures from the Pantheon to the pyramids, we might be witnessing not just similar goals, but the shared fruits of a global research and development project, a silent collaboration across millennia to unlock the deepest secrets of the Earth itself. But the greatest network hubs were not built for trade alone, they were built for the soul. Across the ancient world, certain locations became magnetic poles of human movement, not because of commerce, but because of a profound, shared calling. Places like the pyramids at Giza, the towering stone circles of Göbekli Tepe, or the vast Avenue of the Dead in Teotihuacan were far more than cities or monuments. They were sacred pilgrimage centers, the beating hearts of the global knowledge network. Think of them not as silent ruins, but as bustling, ancient conference halls, buzzing with a purpose that transcended language. The journey itself was the mechanism. A family from Anatolia, a trader from the Indus Valley, a priest from a distant island, all undertaking a difficult, often perilous voyage spanning months or even years. Their goal was spiritual fulfillment, to touch a place where the veil between earth and heaven was believed to be thin. But the unintended consequence of this sacred travel was the most efficient idea exchange system the ancient world ever devised. When that pilgrim from Anatolia finally stood before the colossal temples of Egypt, they were not just awed, they were educated. They absorbed the sheer scale of the engineering, the precision of the alignments, the artistry of the carvings. They listened to the local priests explain the stories of the gods tied to the architecture, and they participated in rituals timed to celestial events. This was a total immersion in a foreign school of thought. Then they began the long journey home. Carrying within them now was a treasure more valuable than any artifact, a living memory of a different way to build, to worship, to see the sky. Upon returning, they would share these stories, these observations, with their own communities' builders and spiritual leaders. A master mason, hearing a description of a new stone fitting technique, might be inspired to experiment. An astronomer, learning of a different method for tracking Venus, could refine his own charts. The pilgrimage site functioned as a universal university, a neutral ground where priests, astronomers, engineers, and artists from wildly different cultures could meet, not by formal appointment, but through the shared rhythm of ritual and festival. During a solstice celebration at a place like Stonehenge or Chichen Itza, thousands would gather. In that crowd, conversation sparked. A healer from one region might share a herbal remedy with a traveler from another. A storyteller might hear a new version of the flood myth, absorbing its subtle differences. This constant flow of people created a powerful cultural feedback loop. Knowledge from across the network flowed into these hubs, concentrated and synthesized there, and was then carried back out in all directions by the returning faithful, each pilgrim becoming a living library, a node spreading the latest innovations in sacred science. This is how a spiritual concept from Mesopotamia could find its way into a temple decoration in Central America, not through invasion or direct trade, but through the slow, patient footsteps of countless seekers, each adding a piece to the grand, interconnected mosaic of human understanding. The human mind itself offers a compelling alternative to this global network. Skeptics present a powerful counterargument, one rooted in the very biology of our species. It is called the principle of independent invention, or sometimes convergent cultural evolution. The idea is straightforward. If you give similar problems to similar minds in similar environments, will they not often arrive at similar solutions? Consider the fundamental challenges every early civilization faced. You need to build a tall, stable structure that will not collapse. The pyramid, with its wide base and sloping sides, is not just a spiritual symbol, it is a brilliant and perhaps inevitable answer to the laws of physics. Every agricultural society needs to know when to plant and when to harvest. Looking to the sky, tracking the sun's path and the seasons, becomes a universal necessity, not a shared secret. From this perspective, the global similarities we see are not echoes of contact, but parallel outcomes of the same cognitive journey. The real network, then, is internal, the shared cognitive hardware of the human brain. All Homo sapiens come equipped with the same capacity for pattern recognition, for tool use, for symbolic thought. Faced with a star-filled sky, a human in Mesopotamia and a human in Peru are both driven by the same innate curiosity to find order and meaning in the celestial dance. This argument cannot be dismissed. It is elegant, logical, and reminds us of the incredible, universal creativity of our species. It suggests that genius is not a rare gift given to one culture, but a latent potential within all of humanity, waiting for the right conditions to spark into flame. Yet this perspective invites a deeper, more precise question. How specific, how complex does a similarity need to be before coincidence becomes an insufficient explanation? Independent invention can readily explain why two cultures might both build mounds or watch the stars. But can it as easily explain why they would both choose to encode the same complex mathematical ratio, like pi or the golden section, into their most sacred architecture? Can it explain why the same obscure 584-day cycle of the planet Venus became a centerpiece of ceremonial calendars on opposite sides of the world? Can it account for the apparent clustering of certain advanced technologies, like specific metallurgy techniques or mortar formulas, within particular windows of time across disparate regions? The debate hinges on weighing the remarkable capacity of the isolated human mind against the intricate fingerprints of what looks like shared technical dialogue. It asks us to discern where the boundary lies between parallel discovery and whispered transmission. Perhaps the most profound answer lies not in choosing one side over the other, but in seeing how these forces intertwine. The universal human mind provided the engine, but the ancient knowledge network may have provided the blueprint, accelerating and refining our innate genius into a collective project that spanned the globe. Stones and stars are silent, but words are living echoes of the past. To trace the ancient network, we must listen to its language. Philology, the study of the history and evolution of words, offers a different kind of evidence, a map written not in stone, but in sound and meaning. This field looks for linguistic cognates, words in different languages that share a common ancestral root, pointing to a deep, shared past. Think of the English word mother, the Spanish madre, and the Sanskrit matter. Their similarity is no accident. It reveals their descent from a single, ancient Proto-Indo-European word. This principle can be a powerful tool for tracking the movement of ideas. While architectural blueprints may not have survived, the words used to describe them very well could have. Consider the names for fundamental tools or materials. The word for axe or adze, a critical tool for shaping stone and wood, might show surprising similarities across linguistic families that are otherwise distinct. If the term for a specific type of cutting tool appears in both the ancient Mediterranean and in early South Asian languages with a shared phonetic core, it suggests the tool and the knowledge of its use traveled together along those early pathways. More abstractly, the names for celestial bodies could be linguistic fossils of shared sky lore. The word for a particular star or planet, carried by migrating peoples or traveling astronomers, might be adopted by new cultures along with the observational data attached to it. This is not about finding a single, universal ancient language, but about detecting the subtle borrowings and adaptations that occur when complex concepts are exchanged. The evolution of words for measure, build, corner, or foundation can chart the spread of the architectural ideologies themselves. When a society learns a new construction technique, they often adopt or adapt the terminology that comes with it. A master builder from one land teaching a new method would need to name the parts, the tools, and the actions. Those foreign terms could then seep into the local language, evolving over centuries but retaining a traceable link to their origin. This linguistic archaeology complements the physical evidence perfectly. An artifact found far from home is a single data point, but a cluster of related technical terms shared between two cultures suggests a sustained intellectual exchange. It implies conversations, not just cargo. For instance, if words related to astronomical calculation or geometric proportion show unexpected links between distant linguistic groups, it paints a picture of scholars and artisans sharing not just goods, but glossaries, slowly building a shared technical vocabulary across continents. This approach helps us reconstruct the intellectual pathways, the invisible routes along which the most valuable cargo of all, knowledge, was carefully transported and translated, one word at a time, weaving a web of understanding that ultimately connected humanity's earliest architects in a silent, global conversation. This slow, patient conversation did not last forever. A profound shift began as the first great empires rose from the fertile river valleys, their ambitions etched not just in stone but in a new philosophy of power. Civilizations like Egypt under the pharaohs, the sprawling reach of Assyria, the administrative machine of Rome, and the unified might of Qin China began to view knowledge not as a shared river to be navigated by all, but as a treasure to be locked within palace and temple vaults. The open, collaborative network that had once connected master builders across continents began to fray at the edges, strained by a new world order built on walls, both physical and intellectual. In this age of empire, innovation became a state secret. The recipe for a superior alloy of bronze or steel, the geometry for building a more effective catapult, the charts for navigating beyond sight of land, these were no longer stories to be shared with pilgrims. They were proprietary technologies, classified assets that gave one kingdom a military or economic edge over its rivals. Knowledge became a weapon, and weapons are not given away. This shift from a diffuse web to centralized control fundamentally altered the flow of ideas. The free exchange that characterized the earlier age, where a concept could meander for centuries, adapting and evolving with each new culture it touched, was often replaced by directed, state-sponsored research with a single, clear purpose, conquest or consolidation. The network did not vanish, but its currents were redirected. Trade routes still carried goods, but the intellectual cargo became more guarded, more filtered through the lens of state interest. A royal envoy might commission foreign artisans for a project, but the deepest principles of their craft might remain closely held, a transaction rather than a true collaboration. Even the great innovation of written language, which so beautifully preserved knowledge for posterity, had a dual edge. While it prevented the loss of complex ideas over generations, it could also restrict access. When script was complex and literacy was limited to a small priestly or scribal class, knowledge became the domain of an elite. The sacred geometry that was once sung and demonstrated could now be encoded in scrolls kept in restricted libraries. The calendar's calculations, once a communal understanding tied to the sky, could become an arcane science managed by a state astronomer who served the king's divine mandate. This fragmentation under the weight of militarism and central control may have slowed the kind of breathtaking, cross-cultural synthesis we see in the megalithic world. The earlier age produced a family of architectural ideas, like the pyramid or the stone circle, that appeared in distinct yet recognizable forms across the globe, a testament to adaptation. The imperial age often produced spectacular but more culturally specific monuments like the Great Wall or the Colosseum, designed to showcase the power of a single people, a single ruler. This was not an end to human connection, but a change in its character. The organic, peer-to-peer network of humanity's earliest architects gave way to a world of diplomatic channels, state-sponsored academies, and the guarded transfer of technology through treaty or tribute. The collaborative project of building a sacred mountain to touch the heavens slowly became the proprietary project of building an empire to rule the earth. The global conversation grew quieter, more formal, and the shared language of stone and stars began to whisper in dialects that were increasingly kept apart. The digital age has not ended our quest for connection. It has accelerated it to the speed of light. Today, we are actively weaving a new global knowledge network, one built not from stone and star lore, but from silicon and light. The modern internet shares a profound, almost poetic, kinship with the ancient web that connected the first architects. Both systems are designed for a single, fundamental purpose: the transmission of ideas. In the past, this meant oral traditions carried by pilgrims and encoded in myth. Today, it is data packets, streams of ones and zeros, racing along fiber optic cables and bouncing off satellites. The medium has changed, but the mission remains astonishingly similar. Both networks rely on critical nodes. In the ancient world, these were the sacred pilgrimage centers, the Stonehenges and Teotihuacans, where people gathered to exchange spiritual and technical wisdom. In our world, these nodes are server farms and data centers, vast, humming temples of information where knowledge is stored, processed, and sent onward. They are the modern world's silent, powerful megaliths. Both systems also grapple with the eternal challenge of standardization. The ancient builders needed a shared megalithic yard or a common celestial calendar to collaborate. We require universal protocols, the TCP/IP that allows a device in Tokyo to speak seamlessly with a server in Toronto, and standardized file formats so a document created on one continent can be read on another. This drive for a common language is a constant thread in the human story of connection. Even our grandest intellectual pursuits echo this pattern. The modern scientific quest for a unified theory in physics, a single elegant framework to explain all cosmic forces, mirrors the ancient philosophical search for a sacred geometric code, a single mathematical principle underpinning all of creation. Both are attempts to decipher a universal blueprint, one written in the fabric of space-time, the other perceived in the proportions of a temple. Recognizing this deep continuity changes how we see our own moment in history. Our information age, with its overwhelming flood of data and its promise of instant global communication, is not a radical break from the past. It is the latest, fastest iteration of a primal human impulse. We are still that same species driven to connect, to share what we know, and to build upon the intelligence of others. The internet is simply our newest tool for doing what we have always done, weaving a collective mind. This perspective completes a circle that began millennia ago. It suggests that the silent conversation between the pyramid builders and the stone circle engineers never truly stopped. It only paused, waiting for technology to catch up to the ambition of the human spirit. We are not creating something entirely new, we are remembering, on a planetary scale, how to be a network. And in that remembrance, we become the latest architects in a story that has always been about building bridges, not between stones, but between minds. This changes everything we thought we knew about the story of us. If the ancient world was truly a vibrant, interconnected web, then the very timeline of human progress needs to be redrawn. Our textbooks often present a neat, linear march, a relay race of civilization where the torch passes from Mesopotamia to Egypt, to Greece, to Rome. But what if that torch was never passed? What if instead it was a constellation of many torches, all burning simultaneously across the globe, their light shared and reflected through a vast, slow-moving network? This is the profound implication of the knowledge network model. It suggests that what we call progress was not a series of lonely, heroic breakthroughs, but a collaborative, planetary project. The invention of astronomy, of monumental architecture, of complex mathematics, these were not singular events that happened once and then spread. They were conversations with contributions flowing in from countless cultures, each adding a verse to a shared epic of discovery. Think of it like a potluck feast for the human mind. One culture brings a deep understanding of celestial cycles, perfected over generations of watching the night sky. Another brings an ingenious method for moving massive stones, born from the challenges of their local landscape. A third brings a sacred story that gives meaning to the geometric shapes they use. When these contributions meet at a pilgrimage site or along a trade route, they don't just coexist, they combine. The celestial knowledge informs the placement of the stones, and the sacred story gives purpose to the entire design. The resulting monument is a hybrid, a child of many parents. This means we can no longer point to a single cradle of civilization. Instead, we must acknowledge a whole nursery with many cradles gently rocking in rhythm, connected by invisible threads of exchange. The pyramid is not an Egyptian idea that others copied. It is a human idea that found one of its most perfect expressions in Egypt, while finding other, equally profound expressions in Mesoamerica and elsewhere. The genius was in the network itself, in the collective human capacity to synthesize and adapt. This perspective naturally challenges historical narratives that place one region or one people at the pinnacle of ancient achievement. It dismantles the outdated notion that certain cultures were inherently more innovative while others were merely passive recipients. When we see the same sophisticated astronomical alignments in Britain, in Cambodia, and in the American Southwest, we are forced to appreciate the intellectual vigor of all these societies. They were not waiting for knowledge to arrive from a more advanced center. They were active participants in a global dialogue, local geniuses contributing their unique insights to the common pool. This rewrites the hero narrative of history. We lose the names of individual inventor kings, but we gain something far greater: a profound respect for the anonymous master builders, the unnamed astronomer priests, the forgotten navigators who carried these seeds of wisdom across deserts and oceans. Their collective legacy is the interconnected world they built, a testament to a time when humanity, in all its beautiful diversity, saw itself as part of a single, sacred project to understand the cosmos and leave a mark upon the earth that would whisper to the future. Our shared past becomes not a simple line, but a magnificent, intricate tapestry, woven from threads gathered from every corner of the world. The tools for unraveling this ancient conversation are no longer just shovels and brushes. Our search for the global network is entering a new frontier, powered by technologies that would seem like magic to the builders themselves. The next chapter of this story will be written not in the field notebook alone, but in the genetics lab, from the vantage point of orbit, and within the silent hum of a supercomputer. Each offers a unique lens to see the invisible threads that once connected humanity. Take archaeogenetics, the study of ancient DNA. This science allows us to trace the literal footsteps of our ancestors with breathtaking precision. By analyzing genetic material from ancient resting places, researchers can now map migration routes, population mixtures, and the timing of great human dispersals. This provides a biological map to overlay on our cultural one. If we see a sudden, specific innovation in pottery or masonry appearing in a region, genetics can tell us if a new group of people arrived there at roughly the same time, potentially carrying that knowledge in their traditions. It moves us from asking if ideas could have traveled to showing how the people who held those ideas actually moved across the landscape of millennia. From the intimacy of DNA, we zoom out to a planetary scale. Satellite imagery and LIDAR, which uses laser pulses to map ground elevation through forest canopy, are revolutionizing archaeology. These tools act as X-ray vision for the planet, revealing what our eyes cannot see. In the dense jungles of Central America and Southeast Asia, LIDAR has recently unveiled vast, sprawling urban complexes and ceremonial centers that were completely unknown. Each new discovery expands the map of the potential network, adding more nodes, more possible connection points. We are finding that the ancient world was far more populated, far more engineered than we ever dreamed. This expanding map forces us to reconsider the distances between cultures, not as empty voids, but as spaces potentially dotted with way stations and communities that facilitated the long, slow exchange of ideas. Then we peer into the Earth itself with advanced geophysics. Techniques like ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography allow scientists to see structures and features buried deep underground without moving a single stone. This could be the key to detecting shared construction methods, not just shared styles. Imagine scanning the foundations of a pyramid in Egypt and a platform mound in North America. If both show a similar, unique technique for compacting their earthen cores or laying their foundational stones, it would be evidence of a shared engineering principle, a fingerprint of the same school of thought preserved in the soil. But perhaps the most transformative tool is what some call data archaeology. We now have vast digital libraries of artifacts, inscriptions, architectural measurements, and celestial alignments from sites across the globe. The human brain is magnificent at spotting patterns, but it is limited. Artificial intelligence can analyze these massive, interconnected datasets in ways we cannot. An AI could be tasked with searching 10,000 images of pottery motifs or 100,000 architectural measurements, looking for subtle, non-obvious correlations. It might detect that a specific symbol tends to appear alongside a particular astronomical alignment in cultures separated by oceans, or that a certain building ratio clusters in a specific time period across 3 continents. These are patterns invisible to us, the faintest echoes of the network signal buried in the noise of millennia. By finding them, I could provide the bold, testable hypotheses for a new generation of human researchers to explore. The future of this great investigation, therefore, lies in synthesis. The lone archaeologist in a trench is now joined by the geneticist, the satellite data analyst, the geophysicist, and the AI programmer. The mystery of humanity's first global web is a puzzle that can only be solved through this radical interdisciplinary collaboration. We are using the most advanced tools of the 21st century to listen in on a conversation that began in the 10th millennium before the Common Era. We are building a new kind of network to understand the old one, hoping that through our connected minds, we might finally hear what the stones and stars have been trying to tell us all along. The beauty of a mystery lies in its resistance to easy answers. As we stand before this grand vision of a connected ancient world, we must pause and ask the hardest question of all: how do we know any of it is true? The patterns are compelling, the parallels are striking, but the human mind is also a master at finding patterns where none exist. This is where our journey must take a crucial turn from wonder to scrutiny. To take these ideas seriously, we must subject them to the same rigorous standards we apply to any scientific inquiry. Extraordinary claims, as the saying goes, require extraordinary evidence. The vision of a global knowledge network is undoubtedly extraordinary, and its evidence must be held to the highest possible standard. We must learn to differentiate between a compelling, meaningful parallel and a forced comparison born from our own desire to see connection. Two cultures building mounds is interesting, but two cultures building mounds with the same precise interior angle and aligned to the same minor star cluster becomes something else entirely. The distinction is in the specificity, the complexity, and the statistical unlikelihood of independent discovery. This is where the tools of the scientific method become our most trusted guides. The principle of peer review is essential, not as a gatekeeper to silence new ideas, but as a filter to separate insight from error. When a researcher proposes a new linguistic link or a shared architectural technique, that claim must be examined by other experts in the field, people who can check the data, question the assumptions, and attempt to replicate the findings. This process is not about proving someone wrong, it is about proving an idea robust. Falsifiability is another cornerstone. A strong theory makes predictions that can be tested and potentially proven false. If the knowledge network model suggests that a certain symbol should appear along ancient trade routes, we can go look for it. If we search extensively and do not find it, that challenges the theory. A theory that cannot be falsified by any possible evidence is not science, it is just a story. And then there is Occam's razor, the principle that the simplest explanation that fits all the facts is often the best. When we see two similar pyramids, is the simplest explanation a vast transoceanic network of architects, or is it the independent application of human ingenuity to the universal problem of building a tall, stable structure? The answer is not always obvious, and often the simplest explanation only seems simple because it fits the narrative we already accept. This is why the debate between diffusionists, who argue for the spread of ideas, and independent inventionists, who champion parallel genius, is not a conflict to be won, but a conversation to be welcomed. It is a necessary, healthy tension that sharpens our thinking. The diffusionist pushes us to look for the threads, the pathways, the tangible evidence of contact. The independent inventionist reminds us of the awesome, creative power of the isolated human mind and cautions us against underestimating our ancestors. This dialogue forces both sides to marshal their best evidence and refine their arguments. The goal of this rigorous scrutiny is not to shut down inquiry or dismiss the possibility of ancient connections. Quite the opposite, its purpose is to strengthen the inquiry, to build a foundation so solid that the ideas which survive the process carry genuine weight. We are not searching for just any story about the past. We are searching for the most likely story, the one best supported by a convergence of evidence from archaeology, genetics, linguistics, and astronomy. This careful, critical approach ensures that our conclusions about ancient knowledge networks are built not on wishful thinking or intriguing coincidences, but on a bedrock of logic, reproducible analysis, and interconnected proof. It is the difference between a robust theory that can change how we see history and mere speculation that fades with the next gust of wind. By embracing this skepticism, we honor the mystery itself, ensuring that the connections we finally trace are real, and that the silent conversation we strain to hear is truly a message from our shared past, and not just an echo of our own hopes. Our journey brings us to a profound and humbling realization. The scattered stones and silent pyramids we have explored are not relics of isolation, but the enduring signatures of a conversation. This vision of antiquity transforms our earliest ancestors from primitive, isolated tribes into something far more remarkable, interconnected communities of brilliant thinkers and master builders. We have traced the threads of this potential network through the silent language of celestial alignments, the global vocabulary of megalithic stone, the shared dreams encoded in flood myths and serpent symbols, and the precise, common rulers like the megalithic yard. While each piece of evidence on its own might be circumstantial, a curious coincidence, the cumulative pattern is what compels us. When you see the same complex astronomical focus, the same reverence for specific geometric ratios, and the same architectural solutions appearing across oceans and mountain ranges, a picture emerges that is difficult to dismiss. It suggests a lost world wide web, a slow, patient system of exchange that turned individual genius into a collective inheritance. Whether this connection was forged through the direct footsteps of pilgrims and mariners, or sprang from the shared cognitive map of the human mind, the outcome feels the same. Our earliest architects, separated by vast distances, appear to have been participants in a single, grand, and collaborative project. Their goal was to understand the cosmos, to harmonize with the earth, and to leave a permanent mark that spoke of their place within it. This collaborative spirit reframes every ancient monument we encounter. The Great Pyramid, Stonehenge, the Mounds of Cahokia, they cease to be merely isolated tombs or temples for a local king or god. Instead, we can begin to see them for what they might truly be, permanent nodes in humanity's first great network. Each one is a testament to a conversation that spanned continents, a frozen moment in a long, slow dialogue about the nature of reality itself. This perspective does more than rewrite a history book. It changes how we see our own human nature. It speaks to an enduring, fundamental desire that has always been with us, the urge to connect, to share what we know, and to build something greater together. The stones they left behind are a message in a bottle from our collective past, reminding us that collaboration, not isolation, has always been the source of our greatest achievements. Their legacy invites us to look at the lines on the map not as borders, but as the faded traces of old, well-traveled paths, and to hear in the silence of their ruins not an ending, but the echo of a conversation we are only now beginning to understand.